Hello. Today I'm not here with Artie and Benji because Benji is still moving house and is just getting comfortable and I believe hasn't got her internet set up. So instead I cajoled one of my favorite people from Twitter to come and speak to me, feminist philosopher Jane Clare Jones, one of the people who I do genuinely miss seeing pop up on my non-existent Twitter feed. Here she is now. Jane, hello. Thank you so much for filling in for Artie and Benji today.
It's an honour to fill in for Artie and Benji. I hope I can live up to their high standards.
Oh, aren't they great? Benji especially. I love. Sorry, Artie.
Benji, no. Yeah, sorry, Artie. Sorry, Artie is amazing. Benji is very special. Benji is very special.
Yes, I feel like Benji being banned from Twitter is one of the worst things they've done. Her voice as a detransitioner is so important, and she's one of the smartest.
She's incredibly perceptive.
Yes.
And her journey and the story of her journey is very powerful, I think.
Yes, I recommend to everyone to subscribe to her channel if you haven't already.
Yeah.
Jane, you've been, obviously very involved in the fight against what I call gender ideology for a number of years now. You were a feminist philosopher and a feminist writer. How do you think it's going at the moment? Do you think there is movement in a positive direction, or how would you describe what's happening at this precise moment?
At this precise moment, I mean, I think we're at a kind of interesting moment. It's always difficult to judge when you're in the thick of it. It's difficult to kind of get outside and really see how things are working. I think one of the things is that J.K. Rowling's intervention has massively increased the kind of level of attention and traction, which is a positive thing, I think, in a lot of respects, and I think a lot of us are incredibly grateful. She's done something very, very brave, and she had no reason to do it in terms of her own personal gains. So it's very rare that you see people doing things that are likely to incur quite serious personal costs for a matter of principle. So I think we're all incredibly impressed with that. It has kind of quadrupled the sort of the spotlight, and there are benefits to that, and then there are also drawbacks to it. It's been really intense the last couple of months, really, and this kind of constant parade of not only men but very often high-profile men coming out, denouncing her, denouncing all of us, in these very facile and glib and not really understanding the issues, but just kind of repeating the memes and blah, 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 and coming out with all the terminating cliches and telling everyone how evil and terrible we are.
Yes.
And the kind of degree of both sexualized abuse and also the kind of flagrant dismissal of women's personal experiences. And we talked a little bit about this, but this whole weaponizing trauma, playing the victim kind of discourse, I think is very that's very hard for a lot of us. It's very hard to deal with. It's very hard to deal with while you're simultaneously being told that you're this evil, all-powerful force that is dead set on doing nothing but persecuting these people, while at the same time men with 1 million followers are trooping out onto Twitter and being fuck you it's indistinguishable from MRA discourse. It's just you're just manipulative, deceptive, what does it mean? What does weaponizing trauma even mean? When you actually dig into what is being said.
Sorry, Jane, is this an actual quote that someone said, weaponizing trauma?
Well, several people have said it. Owen Jones, who is obviously the person I'm thinking about specifically, has not used that phrase in particular, but he has accused us of essentially leveraging our status or making claims to victimhood that are to be treated with contempt, because we're only making those kinds of claims because we're using our power in order to inflict harm on other people.
Yeah. This is an interesting. It's interesting to see him sticking so doggedly to this line when it's all very clear to us that that, for instance, just the clearest example is the reaction J.K. Rowling get, the sexualized threats of violence and the uniformity of bad faith approaches, but that are being taken to what was a very moving essay and several completely compassionate tweets. Sorry, while we talk, I have to turn off WhatsApp so I don't keep getting that sound. I always do that every time I forget WhatsApp. I just find it extraordinary. Like, for instance, is he pretending he hasn't seen the reports about the Tavistock? We've had one Newsnight special. We've had 2 Times pieces. We have Marcus Evans and all these people all saying the same thing, that that homophobic parents are transing their gay kids. And yet there's never any engagement with the substance of these with the substance of these charges. He's like someone who's pushed all his chips in on a pure bluff and is trying to keep a straight face while he waits for the person to fold.
I mean, I think there's something. It is. I don't think it's a pure bluff. I mean, I think one of the things that's going on in the dynamics, there's lots of things going on. I think one of the things that's going on is that a lot of gay men obviously very clearly identify with the kinds of narratives that are being told by trans activists / trans people. In that case, it's a little bit difficult to tell. But the story of having some sense that there is something wrong with you, or that there is a set of social norms that are going to prevent you from becoming the kind of person that you should be able to become, and that there's social stigma which is going to negatively impact you, obviously really clearly resonates with gay men. The reason why it resonates with gay men is because, to a certain extent, that narrative has been taken from the gay rights movement and then applied to trans activism. The idea that whatever is called being trans now, which is such a wide umbrella that I don't think it meaningfully encompasses one set of phenomenon. But that experience is that you are essentially that. You are born in that way. There is something essential about you that makes you trans, and then the only thing that's causing a problem is that there's a set of social stigmas and the social norms that prevent you becoming. You can understand why that narrative resonates for gay men. It's interesting that it resonates less for lesbians than for gay men, because they would have a similar experience, but obviously they also have the experience of being female, so they're looking at it from a slightly different place, a lot of them. But he just can't see beyond that, right? He can't see. He's just got this one narrative. It's like gay rights. It's like gay rights. Anyone that's opposing this is homophobic / transphobic. You're exactly the same kind of people who protested against Section 28, blah, blah, blah. Despite the fact that that's actually a massive distortion of what is going on, because many of us over here are lesbians and or bisexual. It's not, and I've written about this, but the gay rights, trans rights analogy just doesn't hold up.
Actually, can you give us, that would be really useful. Can you give us some bullet points as to why that, and I know you've written an essay about this, very good essay, but for people who don't like to read, can you just give us a few bullet points on where trans rights and gay rights are different? Okay.
So gay rights doesn't involve identification into another class. So that's the first thing. right?
Yes.
So
Gay people were never saying they were actually straight people.
Gay people were never saying they were actually straight people. No, I mean, this is one of the issues about why all the analogies between the trans rights movement in its present form, let's be clear, and other civil rights movements kind of fail is because, oh, now I have to turn WhatsApp on.
Yeah, I'm turning something off as well. Did you just WhatsApp me for some reason in the middle of an interview? That would have been weird.
No civil rights movement in history before has been based on the claim to be able to identify into another class of person, right? They've all been about asking for acceptance as the class of person that you are, right? So it doesn't cause the kind of rights conflicts that this is causing, because this rights conflict is principally between a group of people, women, and then another group of people who are demanding the right to identify into that class, right? So that is not analogous to white people saying, we do not want to share space with black people. It would be analogous to black people saying, we do not want white people to identify into the class of black people, right? Which is why the Rachel Dolezal example comes up. And that's complicated in various ways, but there isn't actually a good account. There's never been given a good account why one of those is transparently bad and wrong, and the other one is not problematic in any way, and anyone that says that it is an evil bigot. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that being gay doesn't involve medicalization. None of the other civil rights movements involve medicalization. They don't involve any form of kind of physical intervention whatsoever. So again, the claim that being trans is just a way of being, and that the only concerns people might have about it are just stigma and prejudice, is slightly different when you're talking about something that involves potential lifelong medicalization. I would say that lifelong medicalization is not a completely neutral outcome as compared to not being subjected to lifelong medicalization, right? It's not.
Well, as someone who had just a small bit of cancer, I was very, very happy when I stopped having to go to the hospital every couple of months. That was a huge improvement in my life.
Right.
So
and also there's all these issues about side effects, and we don't know what the effects are, and there were lots of concerns, once upon a time about HRT, and then apparently we can just give hormones to kids, and we don't know what the long-term consequences of those are. There's issues about Lupron and the effects that it has on brain development and all of these types, and sexual function, and we don't know, right? I think it is patently false to say that the only reason why anyone might have any concerns about that is simply because they hate trans people, right? I don't think it is, particularly when you're dealing with a rights movement that has such a broad definition now of what trans is, that it essentially encompasses all forms of gender nonconformity, and no one has ever been able to provide a clear way of distinguishing being gender nonconforming from being trans, because we don't know what gender identity is, and we don't know what this essence is, right? So there's all of that, and I think it's just blatantly incorrect to assert that those outcomes are completely neutral. I don't think, if you've got a gender non-conforming child and there's a potential for them to become comfortable with being gender non-conforming without that problem being medicalized, I don't think it's fair to say that that could only be produced by hatred and phobia. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that what is being called transphobia isn't phobia.
Well,
so that's what that essay I wrote was principally about. So homophobia was a term that was taken and leveraged in a certain way in the gay rights debate in order to assert that anybody who objected to giving legal recognition and rights to gay people could only be motivated by hatred.
Yeah.
Now, that argument has a lot more weight in relation to homosexuality, because there is no harms associated with homosexuality, right?
And also homosexuality has a very clear definition, whereas as you point out, transphobia and trans, you know,
they
could mean anything. Yeah,
they don't at all. So when you say, you know, like I said, with Owen is a good example. Like, so much of this discourse has just been picked up from the gay rights movement and then transferred. I think, you know, retrospectively, maybe the way in which accusations of homophobia were used to silence or dismiss questions about that political conversation, retrospectively, maybe we should have been a bit more careful about that. At the time, it made sense to me because I couldn't see any legitimate reasons why anybody would object other than being prejudiced against gay people for purely prejudicial reasons. In this case, what we are basically dealing with is a bunch of people who are demanding that we completely reconstruct our definitions of what a man and a woman are, so that they become defined on the basis of some completely ill-defined concept of gender identity, and that one that overrides the material reality of sex. Yes. Now, so effectively, the demand is you must change the entire way you understand reality and change all the words that we have to name that reality. And anybody that doesn't consent to this completely radical reconstruction of how we understand the world could only possibly be motivated by hatred. That doesn't fucking stack up. Right? Like, there are plenty of reasons why I might object to you fundamentally changing the way in which we understand the world in a way that doesn't make any sense to me, I might add, and is harmful to female people, and is harmful to lesbians, and is harmful to children. Mm-hmm. I have plenty of reasons why I'm objecting, and it's not because I hate you. By this point, I'm quite angry. But I'm not angry because I hate you. I'm angry because you're trying to force through a set of demands that I consider to be harmful, and you're trying to do so by subverting democratic process, basically, and that's making me cross. And you also have unleashed the most unholy tsunami of misogyny on women that I have ever seen in my fucking life, and you've given license to all of the misogynists who wanted to dump that aggression on women, but couldn't because they were paying lip service to being progressives. And now every fucking misogynist left-wing man on the planet has an excuse to basically spout straight up MRA, woman-hating bullshit, and they can do it under the cover of being good and progressive, and the results are horrifying. They're horrifying.
That's what the only thing I miss about being on Twitter is that I was able to amplify some of those examples. You know, I was whenever I saw someone rounding on a woman, I would really enjoy amplifying it, simply because these people don't like audiences. You know, they don't like big audiences, and when they have one, they you know, then it becomes, oh, you're bullying them. You know, but. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that some hapless 22-year-old guy turned up on a thread that I did this morning and was basically like, yeah, but you're saying that, like, you know, a woman without a cervix isn't a woman. And I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, not this again. Right. So I kind of, you know, and then the next thing he was all just like, I feel intimidated. And I was like, well, you just came and had a pop at me. And
yeah, but also they feel they can lecture women. They feel that they can lecture women on anything. I always thought, you know, when for instance, I know there's a lot of interscene. Is that how you say it? Interscene? Internecine battles in feminism.
I don't know. I don't know if that's how you say it.
But you know, I would never propose to tell any woman how they're defending themselves against what seems to me to be a siege situation. You know, there's a lot of things that men want, and they're actually succeeding in getting them. So I would never tell a woman how to defend herself. So the idea that you know, it really annoys me when the both sides thing is leveled, because, you know, it reminds me a little bit of other fights I've seen where the difference in aggression and the amount of what's the word? The defenses that the smaller group have is so huge. The difference between the power of both groups is so huge that to say both sides is so offensive and wrong to me, especially when you.
I mean, that's the point. That's the point, more or less, where the Labour Party lost me. Where Keir Starmer was like, both sides need to stop throwing bricks, and we're like, we haven't thrown any bricks. All we've fucking done is written some essays and had some political meetings that were besieged and attempted to make the case that we are affected by these political changes, and that in a democracy we have a right to express our political interests. That's all we have done. We've actually been quite polite.
I know, but as I always say, there's no equivalent to the website "Turf is a slur." There's no equivalent to the Google Images site that's just got thousands of examples of trans-identified men and just men sending the most poisonous abuse to women. You just don't see an equivalent, on our side, and yet it's something I hear. The both sides thing is something I hear all the time. I think it's a way. I think it's a way of people checking out of the conversation.
I also think that it's more than that. It's also to do with the fact that women who don't. Sorry, the cat's sitting on the.
Don't worry.
Don't sit on the iPad.
Jane, every time the cat appears, I'll get millions more subscribers. So.
Oh, okay. Come back. Loopy, come back. I mean, this is J.K. Rowling tweeted something about this Andrea Dworkin quote, but women say, we were just like, ka-ching. I was like, oh man, she is so on side. Every time she tweets, we're like, she just nails it perfectly.
She gets it.
She totally gets it. Women saying no, women having boundaries is considered to be an act of aggression. Like, that's the bottom line. Like, the entire structure, I mean, this is what's so ironic about this whole conversation, right? And this is what I was trying to articulate in the last piece that I wrote. This entire conversation is structured by gender, right? And the fundamental, the people that we're dealing with have the most facile, superficial concept of what gender is. I mean, I got into an argument with a trans woman a couple of weeks ago. And she said something like, I was joking that I was going to get sex is not quantitative or something, like tattooed on my forehead. And she came along and was like, well, you probably should do that to protect all the vulnerable trans women and gender non-conforming women from you. And I was like, I am gender non-conforming. And then she just replied, oh, well, you do realize there are photographs of you on the internet. And I'm like, you do realize you can't tell whether someone's gender non-conforming because they've got like fucking long hair. Look, I'm wearing like a flowery smock. So obviously I'm like, a Barbie doll. They have this incredibly superficial concept, and what they don't understand is that the deep structure of gender is about entitlement and whose needs get met and who's supposed to move over for who.
Yes.
It's much more well represented by sometimes we have this game called Feminist Chicken, where we decide we're going to walk down the street without getting out of the way for men.
Oh yes, I do know.
Right, you know what happens? They walk into you.
That's very funny.
It's like what happens when you decide. I mean, people will talk about the manspreading thing, right? And as an example of like feminists being, oversensitive and shit. But it's a very good visual representation, actually, of the structure of gender, which is men come in, take up the fucking space, and women bend themselves around them. Right. And go like, well, I'll go in this little crack over here then. And it's quite interesting what happened if you don't when a man does that, sits next to you and does that, if you don't bend yourself up, right, which you do reflexively if you're socialized as female, and you're like, no, I'm not moving my fucking leg. what happens is you end up in a like knee pissing contest with the bloke next to you because he will not fucking move.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and now I have to sit here with my knee like awkwardly wedged against this complete stranger, having this kind of slight psychic tussle.
I hate to tell you this, Jane, but the other thing they think is, whoa, she's interested.
I know, yeah, no, it's like you don't want to be touching strange men on the fucking tube, right?
Exactly.
So it's really awkward. So basically, we don't have any choice but to fold ourselves up, right? And that's actually a very good kind of physical representation of how the structure works, which is we want something, we're going to take up some space, and you're just supposed to get out the fucking way.
Yeah, that's what.
Otherwise, I'm going to bang into you.
Yes,
right?
yes. That's exactly what's happening at the moment, isn't it?
And that's exactly what's happening. And if I refuse to get out the way, I'm the one that's being aggressive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we keep saying all effectively we've done is say no. Like you can't have the word that names us in political life because you know.
Yes.
We have certain political interests and we have certain needs as a political group, and we from our perspective, feminism is class politics, right? This is also another thing the Americans don't understand. Like they turn up and they're like, "Why are the British all such evil fucking bitches?" And it's like, because we're doing class politics. You never really got class politics. We understand that, but like if you come along and you tell British women that we're going to erase female people as a political class, we're like, no. No. Sorry, we need that. And we're not doing it because we hate you, right? This isn't about us hating you. To come back to Owen Jones's point, this is because we have our own needs. And doing what you are asking us to do, you are basically asking us to engage in an act of like self-abnegating erasure because you want something. And no, sorry, we're not going to erase ourselves because you have a need. And that logic, that's fucking rape logic. I want something, you give me what I want. If you don't give me what I want, you are committing an act of violence against me, and I have the right to punish you. That's the entire structure of male violence. If you want to convince us that you are identified with women, enacting the precise logic of patriarchal violence on us is like really not the most convincing strategy. So the longer this goes on, the more it generates that kind of response, right? It's like, if you want us to think of women, maybe stop fucking hammering down the door with bats, right?
Yes. I feel that's becoming more and more true of pronouns. I know now that like there's a lot of trans allies. We have Debbie Hayton and Fiona Orlander and many others, and they're very, you know, they're always very good in they would certainly never demand a pronoun, a certain pronoun be used for them of us, but I think, you know, I think even the people who on our side who would normally give those pronouns anyway are beginning to feel that that's just. I just feel a lot of people are feeling that's giving an inch where they're going to take a mile, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's become politicized in a very unfortunate way, which means that you can't. It's becoming harder even to do the courteous thing of observing someone's pronouns because they politicized it so much.
Right, and the thing, I mean, this is obviously one of the areas where there is a degree of dispute among us. My opinion at the moment on this is that every individual woman has the right to come to their own conclusion about what they feel is okay about doing this. I totally understand the argument because, you know, because they have so the trans rights movement has so monumentally taken the piss at this point that we're just kind of like, this is an act of politeness and of respect, right? It's not an ontological statement. It was never intended as an ontological statement. most of us were prepared to extend that recognition as an act of politeness, and because we recognize that you have needs, and okay, right, but
and that people were in some distress,
and people are in distress, and nobody, I won't say nobody, but the vast majority of us are not in this because, contrary to Owen Jones's constant fucking demonization, right? We're not in this because we are deriving pleasure from causing people distress, right? We're in this because of our own interests, because actually, Owen, we exist and we do have our own needs.
And the demands are causing us are causing you distress. The demands.
We are. I mean, at this point, this is what, to come back to the point about the last couple of months. The last couple of months have been, this whole fight is distressing anyway, and it causes a lot of rage, and it also is very triggering. Right. A lot of women involved in the feminist movement are involved in the feminist movement because they have direct experiences of male violence. And in order to process those experiences, feminism has been very important to them because it helps you understand what has happened to you and why it has happened. And contrary to the idea that it's about a victim narrative, it's not. It's about understanding that this is a structural phenomenon and that this didn't happen to you because you are flawed, right? Yes. It's about divesting yourself of shame and understanding it's a political problem. That's what the personal is political means, yes, right? Yes. And that analysis saves women's lives.
Yes, yes.
It absolutely saves women's lives. And it enables them to take things that they have experienced that have been incredibly destructive and annihilating and traumatic to them, and to come to understand them in a way that allows them to turn that into something they can put into the world in a positive way, right? And so, they're taking that analysis away from us, right? That's one of the reasons that we're defending the analysis. It's not just that we're defending our existence as a political class and the rights that follow from that. We're also defending the ability to speak the truth and to analyze what happens to us, because that analysis saves women's lives.
Yes.
And it also saves young women's lives, right? And one of the tragedies of this situation is that so many young women are being cut off from an actual analysis of that, and that comes through a lot in the stories of some of the detransitioners, right?
Yeah.
They suddenly go, oh, this is happening because of sex, right? I get it.
Yeah.
And the power that trans women have in terms of setting the terms of the discourse inside the trans rights movement is a classic example of that. None of the stuff about erasing the words women is really because it helps trans men.
Yes,
right?
Yes. I was thinking about this today, yeah.
It's all because it breaks it breaks the relationship between the concept of woman and the concept of female. That's what's happening.
Yes.
And the reason for that is so that you can turn the concept of woman into a non-sex-based concept. That's the objective, right? It serves trans women's interests.
Yes. The whole ideology serves trans women's interests and not trans men. As I was saying recently, all trans men seem to get out of this ideology is double mastectomies and interviews when they get pregnant. Whereas men get political positions, they get all the things that they would have tried to push themselves into anyway. They are more successful at pushing themselves into sports.
Interestingly, there are a lot more trans men involved in the trans rights movement behind the scenes than at the front, right?
Yes.
And again, this is a sex-based thing, right? It's a kind of weird iteration of a fucking cricket match, right? like the males are all out the front being showy and peacocky, and the people who were born and socialized as female are behind the scenes doing the fucking graft. So a lot of the not all of them, but there are Stephen Whittle's the classic example, but there are significant numbers of trans men who played very important roles in the structuring and like political execution of the trans rights project. But they are very much behind the scenes. They're very much behind the scenes. And so they are, I mean, those trans men are getting something out of it. And, you know, Stephen Whittle was a key figure actually in the development and dissemination of the ideology. Quite what is going on with that is a story in itself. But Stephen Whittle's idea about gender roles are not the most progressive. Let's just say.
I would say that that's probably true of a lot of people who are in this on the other side. That the gender roles seems to be, you know, you often see things like, oh, you know, since I started on estrogen, I've noticed myself becoming dumber and stuff like this. You know, there's a kind of a weird idealization of views of women that are so archaic that it's just extraordinary that they feel free to say them out loud.
It was actually that, like, was one of the first red flags that I had, because I mean, like, I've been in this flight for 8 years now, and before that, like every other good liberal person, I was just like completely accepting and like, yes, of course, and blah blah blah. And one of the first red flags I ever had was when a trans woman I was good friends with, who was a lovely person, and said to me one night when we were drunk, I feel really guilty about the fact that I'm still good at maths.
Oh God. Wow, that must have sobered you up.
And I was like, whoa. I was like, female people can do maths, you know. And I didn't think too much about it. And then a couple of years later, I ran into the TRAs on Twitter. And then I was like, holy fuck. Which is kind of that's what I put in the annals, right? But that was that definitely sobered me up.
Do you think there's an aspect of trying to escape expectations placed on them as men? Trying to just swerve them completely?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what I say about, I don't think it's one phenomenon, right?
Yes.
I mean, as a whole now, under the huge umbrella, it's definitely not one phenomenon at all, right? I really don't know what Benji has in common with Caitlyn Jenner, for example.
Yeah.
Particularly that kind of conflict, when you look at the young female lesbians, and then you look at the older, late transitioning powerful men, and you're like,
yeah,
these are not the same kind of thing.
Yes.
But even inside the phenomenon of males who identify as women, that doesn't look like one thing to me either. Gender nonconformity in males is a thing. And I do believe that can cause dysphoria under certain sets of conditions, and there may be physiological components to a propensity to have a dysphoric reaction. We don't know enough about that, because actually people are not investigating the dysphoria part of this anymore. They're still trying to find, you know, everyone's focused on trying to find the biological underpinnings for the mythical gendered soul. But one of the things that I think is happening is, there used to be a trans woman called Miriam Afloat, who was around during the First War, who was really great. She was one of our allies. And she
could you make clear what the First War means to people who might not be?
Sorry, the First War. This is an entirely personal narrative, actually. It's not an entirely personal narrative. It's partly because I basically, so I ran into trans activism in late 2012, 2013, which is, I don't know whether that was just me, but it seemed there was a period where there was a kind of a renaissance of like online feminism, basically. And Caroline Criado Perez was doing like banknotey stuff, and there was everyday feminism and like the No More Page 3 campaign, and like a kind of, and so this kind of online feminist community developed. And then it felt very quickly suddenly a certain portion of that community, plus a bunch of trans activists turned up, started spouting what we would now call trans ideology / intersectional feminism kind of drama. And I still, to this day, and I'm not sure I will ever understand how it happened, but it was literally like they all got some fucking download and everybody started saying, like, repeating these fucking memes at us. And we were suddenly like, what is happening? So I spent quite a lot of that. There weren't that many of us around, really, because we were like madly outnumbered. But those of us who were like, what? Spent probably a couple of years gathered in corners of the internet, basically just being like, what the fuck is happening? And like trying to work out what they were saying, because it was like completely bonkers, obviously. And we were just like, colonialism, what?
Yeah.
Believing that humans are sexed is racist? What? Where is it? Like, and we had no idea. It literally was like an episode of Doctor Who, It's like that thing where everyone had like earpieces in, and suddenly there was like this fucking mad download, and everyone just started going, and we were just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And we tried to like mount a defense at that point, but we had no traction whatsoever. Nobody was listening to us. We were being no platformed everywhere. And then I think none of us realized at that point what level of policy capture had been laid already. Like that's only subsequently become clearer to us. When we saw the discourse going over the hill, I thought naively that public institutions would be like, but this is batshit.
Yeah.
And instead, they all just started going, trans women are women, anyone that disagrees is a bigot, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, oh, fucking hell. And so the discourse just like set like concrete, and we couldn't get any purchase on it whatsoever. So I basically, at that point, my thinking was, until this actually starts manifesting in real life and people start bumping into it, like boys turning up in girls' changing rooms and these types of things, and the things that have happened in prison, which we predicted, then there's not going to be any traction. So I basically I fucked off to Prince World and finished my PhD.
Okay.
And then I came back in 2018. I kind of rejoined in 2018 when the consultation was happening.
I should say that Jane is a massive Prince fan.
Everyone knows that.
And so that was the first war, and then you returned to it more recently. When did you kind of decide? I kind of threw my hat back in the ring. Sorry, I have a cat too, just to say.
Oh, hello, Caddy.
There's another 1,000 subscribers.
I came back basically in June of the consultation year, so 2018. So I was obviously like still in touch with people, and so I was kind of keeping an eye on what was going on, and I could see that things were. There was the attack on Maria McLachlan, and Women's Place was formed, and there was a bunch of different things going on. So I could see that traction was kind of building up again. And I was thinking about what I was going to do. I was considering whether I should get an academic job or not. And I was kind of slightly on the fence about it because of the state of universities. But while I was considering that, I didn't feel like I was able to say anything. And then in early June of that year, actually, I met Kathleen as well. Kathleen entered the debate, and that also was a big factor for me, because it gave me a place to kind of position myself. I was like, okay, philosophers are speaking out now. Okay, let's. So I just kind of, it was partly a calculated decision, and it was partly just kind of, fuck it, like. I know some stuff about this, and my skills might be useful, so I'm going to go out and start shouting my mouth off on Twitter. And
well, you've formed so many of my positions and arguments on this. You always put things so clearly, and I really recommend, if you haven't already looked at, I'll put it in the description below. I'll put a link to your brilliant site where you've written some fantastic pieces about this, especially the very funny piece, the Annals of the Turf Wars, where you kind of illustrated the progression of gender ideology, how it became more and more batshit, and how feminists responded to it. While it's very funny, it's also it seems to be a very accurate rundown of what happened and how it happened.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
you don't have to go over it.
The thing that we didn't understand when we first ran into it, and which, I mean, the thing is, we were so caught on the back foot with this, right? Is that when it appeared, it kind of appeared as this huge thing. Like I said, everyone started, and then all of our civic institutions just like fell like fucking dominoes. And it's taken us quite a lot of time to actually have the time and the resources to start going and doing the research to understand how this all started to happen. And we're very lucky. I mean, we have some amazing women like Mary Blackman Mackenzie and the lawyers who have done a lot of really important work on unearthing that. But like the foundations of this were laid in terms of trans activists going in and propagating the discourse inside our civic institutions for like 10, 15 years before we knew anything about this.
Wow. Yeah. It's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was totally done by the back door, basically.
Well,
and it was kind of, we were presented with this like fait accompli. I mean, it's what they did in Canada. I mean, they effectively abolished
and Ireland,
and they just abolished female people as a political class, and no one was consulted really, and like the women didn't fucking notice, and they're suddenly like, hang on a minute, what just happened? I mean, we are stakeholders in our own political class, and this seems like to come back to the men just being like, why are you such evil bigots? Like, and the thing about weaponizing trauma and whatever else, like, we can never be seen as people who have our own needs and our own interests, who are acting as human beings defending their own needs, because everything about us has to be to do with males. Like, we are doing this because we hate people. We are doing this, it's like, no, we have our own interests. Our interests are shaped by males, right? Insofar as they are a source of harm to us, right?
Yes, sorry about that.
We have safeguarding and these types of things for those reasons, and because our experience of being female is structured by being like in a male-dominated society. But the fact that we're actually just, people keep saying to us, this whole thing about you're anti-trans. It's like, no, we're not anti-trans, we're pro-women, right? Yeah. Like, if you have structured your political ideology so that women articulating their own political interests are anti-trans, then your political ideology is anti-us, right? Yeah. Because we have our own needs, and I'm sorry that our needs mean that you won't get some of your needs met, but that means we have a conflict which we need to negotiate, right? Yeah. And actually, most of what we've been saying is, can we please talk about this and negotiate a solution, because this is a rights conflict.
Which brings us back to the fact that they will not engage. They will not. Someone like Joan Jones will go on pretending he hasn't seen the Tavistock reports for as long as he possibly can. And I mean, I'm sure he's working on some kind of response, because it is going to be too big to avoid at some point. But he's going to have to own up to the fact that he called people who were worried about the transing of young gay boys and girls as he's going to be on record as opposing those people, as not only opposing them but casting them in the worst possible light, so that they would lose their jobs and they would be hounded online. He did all that, and one thing I do hope is that when all this turns around, as I believe it must, because I think when the Keira Bell case comes in, I think that's going to be a big moment. I don't want to jinx it, but But they're, I hope people never forget this. I hope people never forget that people like Owen Jones and Joyle and Mom and all these other people did their very best to cast the men and women who were concerned about this stuff as the most evil people in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that structure, I think there's a couple of things going on with someone like Owen, and also Ellie and, a couple of other people I've engaged with, Guardian journalists, is that there is a complete refusal to understand that the trans rights movement is that what we're objecting to is not just a bunch of trans people. We're not objecting to a bunch of trans people or the existence of trans people. What we're objecting to is a really highly organized political movement and its political objectives, and the way in which it has gone about trying to get those political objectives met, which is by stealth and by excluding women from the political process. And like the whole thing with the Tavistock, like that's not an accident, right? The way in which this has happened is not an accident. The way in which WPATH have like reconstructed the medical guidelines is not an accident. The way in which the Office of National Statistics and the National Records of Scotland ended up messing up the sex data on the census is not an accident, right? These things have not just happened because there's a bunch of trans people. They've happened because there is a highly organized and well-funded political movement with a set of clear political objectives that have been exerting political pressure. And they will never deal with that, right? Yeah. And one of the things that's difficult for us, right, is that when you tell people what is happening, it sounds insane, right?
That's the hardest thing about it. Every crazy thing you point at, they think that you are somehow associated with the crazy thing.
Right, because it sounds like a nutbag conspiracy theory that a whole bunch of people engaged in a concerted political campaign in order to try and erase sex politically. Like that sounds mental, right?
But then you see,
it's like the whole thing where they keep turning up and being like, nobody's denying sex exists. That would be crazy. And we're like,
but how they are able to square that with the treatment that Rosie Duffield just got. That's her name, isn't it? Rosie Duffield, for saying that women have cervixes. No one's saying that sex doesn't exist, but then they're literally calling for her job for saying that women have cervixes. It's how do they square it? How do they live with that cognitive dissonance?
I don't know, but the entire thing requires like really extreme doublethink. And I don't know. I mean, one of the things that's difficult for me, and I'm kind of fascinated by, and I would like to do more work on, because I never believed it. I'm unusual in. I mean, I believed it before I understood the ideology. Like, I met trans people and I was like, okay, well, I'll treat you like a woman because, fine. But as soon as I encountered the ideology, I was like, this is fucking mental. And I never had that cognitive dissonance. So I'm very interested in how people manage to deal with that. I mean, if you look at Rosie Duffield's a good case, or what happened to Jo Rowling, right? Like, that was an insane level of power and like domination that came down on her, right? In multiple forms, right? Yes. From them posting like graphic sexual violence threats and telling her to choke on cocks, and like posting porn on the Ichabod threads, and then people trying to manipulate publishers and whatever else, and then threatening to burn books, and like libraries banning things, and then all these movie stars coming out and denouncing her, and then all the big male blue ticks denouncing her, and then Google, and there was a really intense, and all the Guardian journalists and Owen and everything, right? That was a lot of fucking power coming down on her.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh no, like,
I know.
There's no one's trying to erase sex, and there is no organized movement here, and there is no coercion, and blah blah blah. And they're running around constantly acting like the Inquisition on crack.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's an interesting relationship between the behind the scenes thing and the what's out front, right? Because the ideology is the same, the tactics are somewhat different, but the coercion is, I mean, this is what Alison Bailey's case is about, right? The coercion is coming from both the established and the kind of frontline. I mean, like who all these like little anime bots and like people screaming are, we don't know, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are just straight up MRAs.
Yeah, me too.
They've got full license to go and tell women to choke on dicks. But the point is that nobody in a position of power in the trans rights movement has ever really tried to do anything about the level of intimidatory and sexualized violence that is being brought to bear on women, because it's in their interests, because they are the enforcers. They've actually, Bread makes it sound too calculated, but I'm very interested in what happened on Tumblr in the early years of this decade in terms of the dissemination of the ideology, because it doesn't look accidental to me. And I'm not sure whether we're ever going to be able to unpick that, but it's very interesting that, you've got this very well orchestrated political movement that is pushing this ideology, and then at the same time, an entire generation of kids are exposed to this ideology mostly on Tumblr, which it then later comes to Twitter, but it started out on Tumblr.
Yeah.
And it's extremely propagandist. And I really want to know how that happened, because they're the foot soldiers, right? They're the enforcers. They're where the Twitter mobs get their traction, where the no platforming gets its traction, where the threats against universities and academic speech gets its traction from. They're not an accident. And I mean, I feel badly for them, right? As a generation, I feel badly for them, partly because this is the fucking worst, like shittiest youth culture. I mean, like seriously, seriously, go and listen to some decent music and take some ecstasy and like fuck like bunny rabbits. And stop microdosing yourself on testosterone. This does not look like fun. You do not look like you're having fun. And the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I understand why this generation has a lot of distress. They were brought up on the internet. There's like a lot of structural reasons why there are problems, right? And then that has been taken and manipulated by this political movement in order to produce foot soldiers to enforce a political agenda that I don't think these kids even properly fully understand. I argue with them all the time. They don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, and they seriously think that we're basically like a bunch of like middle-aged old ladies who are just really upset about the fact that they're gender non-conforming. Like, they come up to me and they're like, "How can you be a Prince fan?"
I know, as if he doesn't prove absolutely everything we're saying.
And it's because I'm just like, because you don't understand what we're objecting to, because we're not objecting to you being gender non-conforming. In fact, we think that's quite fabulous. Like, we're a bit upset you're doing it in this ugly hipster way and keep wearing Christmas decorations in your ears. But like, okay, fine, however you want to do that, that's not the problem. Right? The problem is the ideological structure that you're using to explain this, and its political effects, and its effects on the bodies of young people. And it's not, you're not destroying gender. You think you're destroying gender. You're not. You're reinscribing it and medicalizing it. And it's horrifying. It's horrifying.
Well, I think that's probably, even though it's a bit of a downer, I think that's probably a good place to leave it.
It's so much fun.
Well, I know we've done an hour. I mean, I'm happy to do this again if you're up for it, because there's so much to dig into.
Well, you know me, I like to talk.
Well, though, it's been a pleasure to listen, Jane, and I'd like to. I mean, there's still things that we haven't spoken about that I would like to speak about. I really wanted to get into what you were saying about the fact that things seem to be moving in a good way, but at the same time, the pushback against that is so violent that it's actually terrifying. Like I felt that way with J.K. Rowling. I thought, oh, J.K. Rowling now who could look at that essay she wrote about being a domestic violence victim and still call her a bigot? And the answer was all of them. Yeah. All of them were.
I think that was. This is probably a good moment. I think that was. I was reading when it came out. I was on the phone with Lorelei actually, and I was reading it to her on the phone, and we were both crying, right? Yeah. Because we were like, "Oh my God, someone said it. Someone powerful gets it and has said it in a really eloquent, measured, compassionate way, and like they have to listen. They have to hear us now."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There was this tiny moment, I think, where because there was so much humanity in that essay that it was like, you can't just.
Yeah.
And then they did. It was like watching this huge fucking boot come down, and the disavow and the twisting and the don't read it, and she's weaponizing and
don't read it.
And look at that posh cis billionaire bitch whining about her trauma. It was
the Pink News editor called it a pity party.
I mean, you've got this group of people who are demanding that we transform the entire structure of reality by these constant appeals to vulnerability and pain. And, and again, this comes back to a sex-based thing, right? Women can't do that because no one gives a fuck. No one ever gives a fuck. Whenever we talk about we don't actually. Feminism learned a long time ago that we weren't going to get fucking anywhere by trying to appeal to people caring about the trauma of rape victims, because no one gives a shit. Right.
Yeah.
And, the degree, and I've said this, and it's a hard thing to say, but it's like the way male people identify with trans women and the dismissiveness that they exhibit towards women in the same movement is actually the perfect demonstration of the fact that they don't really believe the dogma. Because if they really believed they were female, they would be as dismissive and contemptuous of their pain and trauma and vulnerability as they are of ours. And
well, that's no better in terms of an ending. That's just as depressing. But I am going to have to end it because I have to feed this cat before he claws my leg off. But yes,
do jazz hands or something.
Well, no, they distress me. Don't do jazz hands. Sorry, that was a joke about the Democratic.
No, remind you. Yeah, no, I know.
Jane, that was brilliant, and I hope you'll do it again soon. And thank you for appearing. If you just hang on a second, we'll do a post-match interview once I get rid of all the riffraff. Bye, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us.